going to be talking about an anime that just came out this past year based on a series of light novels titled Re:Zero, Starting Life in Another World. This series had quite a bit of buzz this past year, and as I've not paid much attention to modern anime in recent years, I felt it was time to play a little bit of catch-up. The light novel series, written by Tape Nagatsuki, began online in the year 2012, then began its first manga publications in 2015, followed by finally being adapted into the 25-episode anime series in 2016. And then just a couple months ago, back in March of this year, Re:Zero even got a visual novel released on both PS4 and PS Vita in Japan. The novels have sold pretty well in Japan, and the anime ranked really highly last spring. We've even gotten some of the novels and manga localized in the United States by Yen Press, with the subtitled anime being distributed by Crunchyroll. Hey, that sounds pretty good, right? So I had pretty high expectations for watching this anime series. In theory, the show really is pretty cool. I do rather enjoy high fantasy, as my favorite series to this day remains the Record of Lodoss War franchise. The series focuses around the main character Subaru, your very average 17-year-old shut-in who likes to play video games and doesn't care very much about school. One day, while he's out buying himself instant ramen at the convenience store, he's suddenly transported to a mysterious fantasy world. It's here that he meets a half-elf girl named Emilia and is immediately smitten with her and wants to do all he can to help her. But in the process of trying to help her get back an item that was stolen from her, he gets them both killed. But he quickly learns that when he dies, he starts his life back over from some kind of a checkpoint, giving him the chance to try to do the whole thing all over again and try to get it right. He dies several times, learning a little more about the world every time and moving his checkpoint just a little bit further. The concept is certainly interesting enough, like a fantasy version of Groundhog Day or the novel and manga All You Need Is Kill. I've seen dying and returning to some kind of a checkpoint used in a lot of other genres, but not so much in fantasy. It's pretty well executed in Re:Zero. The subject matter of death is pretty intense too. Re:Zero never shies away from blood and gore. In a number of moments, it's animated to be quite gruesome. Death is absolutely not presented pleasantly, and it doesn't shy away from showing it by leaving it off screen. There's dismemberments and the loss of limbs frequently. While the series starts off pretty lighthearted, don't expect it to remain that way for long. Most of the characters are pretty well written. Emilia herself is one of 5 different young women who've been chosen as possible successors to the royal throne, but the world doesn't much like her because she's a half-elf. The racism isn't based entirely on appearance, but rather on the fact that a legendary evil witch from the world's past was also a half-elf, and so any other half-elves scare them. It makes Emilia a sympathetic character, as she's constantly kind-hearted regardless of the way the world sees and treats her. We meet a number of other characters, mostly young girls, such as Felt, the thief who originally stole a badge from Emilia but later gets herself caught up in becoming one of the other 5 young ladies in line for the throne. Later on, Subaru spends time recovering in a mansion, with twin maids Rem and Ram helping him learn how to handle chores around the house. And then there's Emilia's familiar, Puck, who takes the shape of a small cat spirit and can perform some pretty powerful magic. More and more characters, of course, will get introduced over the course of the series, and most of them are pretty well-rounded with understandable reasons for their actions. Emilia aims to just be the best person she can. Felt is trying her best to survive in the slums. The twin maids love each other more than anything, especially given their emotional past together, and there's even more to Puck than meets the eye. And each of the other 3 girls vying for the country's throne are great competition. The world itself is well illustrated and explained and doesn't take too much overthinking to understand. So sadly, literally the only thing holding this story back is its main character, Subaru. We spend maybe 2 minutes in real-world Japan at a convenience store with Subaru, and then we pretty much never hear about it ever again. He spends just a little bit of time at the beginning of the first episode trying to figure out where he is and how the world works, and maybe a few seconds questioning who even brought him there in the first place, but be prepared to never have it either brought up or resolved at all. Subaru is easily just a blank slate character for the standard Japanese viewer to be able to see himself through. There's totally nothing special about him, which they make absolutely certain to let you know at every turn, and even try to make it his selling point. He's a shut-in who loves fantasy RPGs, so he fits a particular kind of target audience. And then after that, his treatment of just about every female character is particularly upsetting. There isn't a single female character that he doesn't flirt with even a little bit or think of as a possible romantic interest. And in regards to Emilia, the character he loves the most, he's a total white knight in the internet's most detested definition. He does everything for Emilia, trying his best to defend her both from physical attacks and from the hate of anybody who doesn't see eye to eye with her because of her ethnicity, sometimes saying that he believes he deserves a romantic reward from her for all that he does. Now the great part is that Emilia eventually calls him out on it, saying she didn't ask him to do anything that he does, and that he's probably just doing it all for his own satisfaction. I'm super glad that they wrote her character as being perceptive enough to see it. However, Subaru never truly grows from that experience. You might think after that conversation happens that you might begin to see some change within Subaru, but you don't. He'll admit at the end of the series that he was doing what he wanted, but then in the end he just doubles down and says that what he wanted to do was help Emilia, and still manages to spin it positively. Make no mistake, through Subaru, viewers get to experience a true male fantasy. Granted, it's great that the series never takes advantage of fan service through boob and butt shots. Well, okay, the visual novel does. But again, every female is a potential love interest. The most damning one is the blue-haired twin Rem, who, by all accounts, was a super popular female anime character that season. And really, her character development is truly some of the best in the whole series. And she really grows to love Subaru both for all of his actual good characteristics and for the flaws he sees within himself. And Subaru even cares about her, too, and nearly runs away with her when it looks like he's not going to be able to figure out how to save everyone. But right after confessing her love for him, Subaru tells Rem he loves Emilia, and then asks Rem to always stand by his side as he pursues Emilia romantically and goes to rescue her again. And then Rem is actually cool with that. Like, who does that? Honestly! Subaru later calls Rem the number 2 in his heart, just as he lets another woman know that she's almost taken another slot in his heart, and it's just ridiculous. For real, I really do like just about every other character in this series except Subaru. Now, there's totally still room for growth and change here. After all, it seems really obvious that, despite the season being over, the story wasn't done being told. Not all of the named enemies in the series were defeated. We never truly found out who brought Subaru into this fantasy world, although we have a pretty decent idea who it is. There's talk of a prophecy with a dragon that we never get to see, and we never see who becomes the new leader of the kingdom. In reading the manga, it seems like it hasn't even caught up with the anime yet, and if the novels are any further along, I can't say that I know, as I have to confess that I haven't read any of them. However, from going through the manga, I can say that one thing that isn't mentioned in the anime is that Subaru is not the only person who's ever been brought into this world from our real world. At least one other character we're introduced to over the course of the series is also from the real world, probably Japan. And apparently this is something that just happens sometimes, and there might even be a source for where they're all coming from. But even in the manga, it gets brought up, but nobody ever actually explores it or does anything about it. I have to assume that it's the intention of the author to continue down this route and round out all the information they've already given us, but right now, I'm really wondering whether or not another season will ever get made. If it did, I would absolutely give it the chance because, again, the respawning, or return by death as it's called in the anime, is an interesting enough mechanic, and the world is rich enough that I actually care about it. And if there was more room given to turn Subaru into a better person and make him actually care about how he got there to begin with, then I'd be totally down for it. Until then, it's a good foundation for a cool world that just unfortunately has a fairly unlikable main character. Otherwise, for all the recent anime about somebody being transported to a fantasy land, it isn't as though this series isn't worth the watch. Definitely give it a shot over on Crunchyroll if you ever get the chance. Thanks again for watching, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next review.